Welcome everyone to Live at 5. Tonight we'll be speaking about the business of cannabis, the Cannabiz, on this 420 Eve, the industry's national holiday. My name is Oren Bitan. I'm an attorney. I'm the co-chair of my law firm's Cannabis and Hemp Group. We're the longest running business law firm that's been in the space for about 10 years. Let's meet our panel of experts. We have really an esteemed and diverse panel, starting off with Jennifer Berry, Vice President of Retail at Farmacy. Tell us a little about yourself, Jennifer.
Hi, Oren. Thanks so much for having me. A little bit about myself. So I have been in the cannabis space for about 4 years. Have been with the Farmacy locations for the last 3. Previous to that, I was out in Chicago with Green Thumb Industries, which is a multi-state operator. But before I joined the cannabis business, I was in traditional retail, if you want to call it that, with Urban Outfitters and Anthropologie and Nordstrom. So about 16 years with Urban Outfitters and about 10 years with Nordstrom. So been in retail since I was this big.
Wonderful. And you know, as we discussed before the show, it's dog years in the cannabis business. So 4 years is really the equivalent to about 30.
It is, hindsight is 2020, and that first year in the space and everything that you're trying to learn and, all of your skills that you're trying to translate over from the retail world, it was definitely 7 years in 1 year. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. And next we have Tim Rademaker, CEO of Trellis, LLC. Tim, welcome. Tell us a little about yourself.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. So I'm the CEO of Trellis, and Trellis is a commercial cannabis financial services company. We partner cannabis operators with banking and other financial services. And I got into the cannabis space kind of on accident, like I think a lot of people do. I was working in credit unions as an enterprise risk management executive. And one of the big things that I had to do was figure out, how can a credit union make money, and then how do we protect the money that we make? And in 2017, there's a lot of stirrings about what was going to happen with cannabis. It was expanding across the country slowly but surely. And California was opening up. And so we then had a decision to make. Could we enter the space and provide services to the cannabis community, or do we say no? And that's a decision that's not taken lightly, because either way, you're going to have to spend a lot of money to create the infrastructure and train the people to either serve the cannabis market in a way that is compliant, or you're going to say no, and you're going to have to put up walls and barriers to keep out the cannabis community. And at the end of the day, I worked for about 3 years with this issue, talking to other executives, other credit unions, and we decided that it'd be best to build our own company to focus solely on providing access to financial services for the cannabis community. And I'm lucky and proud to be associated with one of the largest credit unions in the country that's banking cannabis, UNIFY Financial Credit Union. And we are committed to making cannabis banking normal. So that's me in a nutshell.
Excellent. Well, I mean, banking and financial services are so essential to the industry. And historically, it's been an all cash business. So your services, your addition, what you're providing the industry is so crucial. And we'll dig a lot more into what you do and why it's so important. And let's bring on Graham Farrar, President of Glasshouse Brands. Graham, please tell us about yourself.
Thanks a lot for having me, Oren. I appreciate it. So my name's Graham. I'm from Santa Barbara. I'm actually originally a tech geek by training. I was one of the original founding group of software.com, which was a .com startup company making email servers for telephone companies and ISPs. We took that public in '99, then went and sailed for a while and came back and was also part of the founding team of Sonos, the home audio system, which we took public about 2 years ago. But I also had my first cannabis grow when I was 16 years old, 17 years old in my closet. And from then to garages and houses. And then 7 years ago, entered the industry full time with the founding of Glasshouse Farms. So we started with a 150,000 square foot farm in Santa Barbara County, and added to that another 350,000 square foot farm, and then started up the first adult use dispensary in the city of Santa Barbara, and then put all those things together along with a couple other dispensaries. We went public about 9 months ago up on the Canadian exchange, the NEO exchange, because of course, U.S. cannabis companies can't go public in the U.S. like Canadian cannabis companies can. So we went public in Canada, and then since then purchased a large greenhouse in Camarillo, which we just got licensed and are really excited to be starting up.
And hopefully all of that irony and confusion about capital markets will be a thing of the past sooner than we know. And we were talking before the show, you have a great social media feed also for anyone that's interested, charting the progress of your grows, and pretty impressive to see it.
Yeah, Graham Farrar is on Twitter is a good place to see. We're trying to document and be really transparent about what we're doing, and I think it's exciting because the stigma of cannabis keeps so many people from seeing how it works, that this is an opportunity. It's like people have been to a winery, they know how that works. Cannabis is actually a lot more fun than that. So being able to understand all the mechanics that go into it is a good eye-opening experience. It's educational, and I think it helps push that stigma away so that we can get to the point where, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So that's what we're pushing for.
That's an aspirational reference for sure. I think we have a short video to get a little insight into Glasshouse. So why don't we run that?
Awesome.
It's not about having a big farm. It's about reaching beyond the expectations of anybody in the cannabis industry.
This is a grower's dream come true. It has never been done before.
I won't call it playing God, but we're in complete control.
What we want to do is take the love that we have for the plant and not dilute it with scale, but amplify it at scale.
I've been in the cannabis industry for about 13 years, and I have never seen anything like this, ever.
Yeah, I mean, that snippet gives you a sense of the scale of what we're talking about here and some interesting statistics. According to Forbes, there are now 428,000 jobs in the cannabis industry. 107,000 jobs were added in 2021. Compared to the entire financial sector, 145,000 jobs. So, I mean, this industry is on the heels of the biggest businesses in this country. We're now at 27 states, medical legality, 11 states recreational, 25 billion with a B products sold in the last year. And when measuring the economic impact, according to MJ Biz, that adds up to 99 billion. It's the taxes, it's the employees, it's how that money ricochets. By 2025, the projection is 45 billion. Just the scale of Glasshouse, the scale of the industry, it's sort of mind-boggling how quickly it went up. So, Graham, tell us, against all that backdrop, what's the state of the market today? What's happening on the ground?
Yeah, and it's amazing. Those stats are incredible, and that's what we're doing as a federally illegal business, with all the stigma and the fact that we have to have a guy on here talking about getting a bank account, right? Can you imagine any other business? Like, you're getting a bank account's not even certainly not on your business plan. It may not even be on your to-do list, right? You just go in and you get it. I remember when we got our first bank account, we had a celebratory dinner, right? Like, that's how big a deal it was, just for the very basics. Say the same thing for insurance, say the same thing for payroll. So when the chains really come off, I think we're going to make all those stats look tiny. I mean, I heard that cannabis last year was the largest job creator by jobs in a category of anything in the entire economy, which says a lot. So, to the question, I think there's a couple different ways to answer that, right? One is from the consumer's point of view, the other is from the operator's point of view, and the third is from an investor's point of view, right? So I think from the consumer's point of view, there's more cannabis consumers today than there ever have been in history. And there'll definitely be more cannabis consumers tomorrow on 420 than there were today. So every day gets better from the consumer's point of view. More states legalize. There's more opportunities and different options of products on the shelf. There's easier access. That said, we still have a really long ways to go. So, California, for example, has about 1,000 dispensaries. We've got about 12,000 liquor stores, right? So we're making progress, but we've got a long way to go on that. So I think, new form factors, great for the consumer. I've always said people who think they don't like cannabis just don't know how they like it yet. And that gets closer every day, because whether it's maybe you don't like to smoke it, but you like an edible, or maybe you don't like edibles, but you like tinctures to help you sleep, or maybe you don't like any of that. You don't want anything psychoactive, but a lotion or a balm helps with your arthritis, right? And then the medical side, they just came out with a study that is a 10-year study, and every county that they legalized cannabis in had lower prescription drug use. And I personally think, cannabis makes the world a better place, and that's a great example of it. On the operator side, it's actually, at least in California, a really tough market right now. There's overtaxation, there's overregulation. We're working hard to fix those things. I think we've got the governor's office on board, less taxes and more retail, but there's a lot of people, ourselves included, really struggling to get through this market because the taxes and the regulations are such a drag. That's reflected a bit in the investor side, where it's, we kind of keep waiting for this catalyst, whether it be safe banking or legalization, but it keeps, getting pushed back because of, frankly, inaction in Washington, D.C. Hard to find an issue that polls as high as cannabis. Hard to find politicians, at least at the federal level, doing less. So I think it will come. The destination's clear. The path is less so, but we're going to get where we're going because, again, cannabis makes the world a better place, and that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I've been given talks like this for a number of years, starting this cannabis group at a big law firm was not insignificant 10 years ago. And it was all supposed to be, this administration was going to be the catalyst, and it was going to be, things were going to be a done deal on banking, on, if not full legality, some states' rights, and total stagnation. The Safe Banking Act, which was supposed to facilitate bank accounts, lending, financial services, passed the House for the 7th time.
Yeah, exactly.
Where is it going in the Senate? Maybe nowhere. And so certainly frustration there. The bulk of the industry is still unlicensed. Consumers are sort of migrating to just the cheapest product possible. So, that's sort of the challenge. But those of us in the industry, I think we almost take it for granted that this entire industry was just built up from nothing. And Jennifer, it's like you walk into one of your stores, none of these products existed a few years ago. Mm-hmm. So, people point out the challenges with the industry, but how can a retailer survive and thrive notwithstanding some of those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, just like Graham said, I think the things that we are constantly looking at every day is like, what are the ad values? And when someone comes in and makes the choice to shop in a legal shop, what are they going to see? And, as the market has matured, and, definitely in my journey over the last 4 years, Graham named a few of them. I mean, there's beauty lines, there's hair care, there's bath bombs, there's topicals. You can definitely consume the way you've always consumed since you were early age consumer. But right now, I mean, every, dispensary, you can have up to about 1,000 unique SKUs. So you're walking in, there's new SKUs coming online all the time, new brands, new focuses. And it's definitely something, Graham says it all the time, but, cannabis for everyone. There is definitely a way for you to enjoy the plant and to consume the plant. And when you go into these retailers, that's really our mission, is just educating the customer, letting them know kind of how they can experience the plant and getting what's right for them, making them feel great when they walk out the door.
Yeah. And Tim, talking about banking, there are over 50,000 state licensed cannabis businesses in the United States. And those businesses, as we pointed out, 428,000 people are employed by this industry. So what's the issue with banks? Why don't they readily service this industry?
Well, what's the issue with banks? There's a lot of issues with banks in the financial services market, but I would say the biggest issue, really, when you break it down, is trust. Banks and financial institutions, they don't like risk, so it's a lot like the stock market. And the trust is lacking, and it's mostly on the side of the financial institution. So financial institutions don't trust that regulations are going to change, right? They don't trust that this is going to become legal. They don't trust that Safe Banking Act is going to pass and give them a safe harbor for opening up to the cannabis community. Likewise, they don't trust the cannabis community because, let's be honest, they don't understand it. Most bankers and the folks, not digging on my compliance friends out there, but most people in banking and in compliance in financial institutions have been trained to distrust anything to deal with illegal drugs, right? That's our mandate. We have to protect the financial system. So they don't trust that the regulations are going to change or change in their favor. They don't trust the operators because they don't understand it. And at the end of it, they really don't trust themselves to stand it up because it is a monumental task to build the systems and put in place the people in order to run an effective commercial cannabis banking program. You have to understand the industry. You have to understand the nature of the beast. You have to be able to identify those good actors versus those that may not be 100% committed to doing this in the most legal way possible. So it creates a huge dichotomy, really, because this lack of trust creates two bipolar issues. The first issue is that, according to a recent survey from, I think it was Whitney Economics, they poll and they get a lot of data on the cannabis industry. And over 70% of cannabis operators said that their number one issue is lack of access to banking and to capital markets. So, like, what other business is there? I've started 5 businesses before, and we never think about, oh, we're not going to be able to get a bank account, right? So, like, where do you start a business, put all the time, effort, and money into that, and then at the end of the day, get your first sale and you have to stick it under your mattress, right? That's a huge risk. The other part of this dichotomy is that there's approximately 12,000 financial institutions in this country today, and there's less than 200 that will actively and willingly bank the cannabis community. That creates a huge demand for access to safe and secure banking, but you won't be able to get it. And why? Because banks know that with the current regulations, banking the cannabis community is technically aiding and abetting in money laundering. So those financial institutions that have been willing and brave to come out and serve the community, I really applaud them for doing that and for doing it the right way. But we need more to come in and do it the right way. And that's what I've been committed to, is making this a reality for our cannabis operators so that they can grow their businesses. And, you know, doing it right on both sides, the operator side and for a financial institution, doing it right is very costly. Like I said, you have to have technology, infrastructure, and really skilled people that know the industry so that they can serve the industry and maintain the safety and security of their financial institution. Yeah. So until things change, we're going to be doing it and focusing on making it the best value for those operators and really understanding them. But until things change at the federal level, I think this is going to be an issue where, you know, demand is going to outstrip supply.
Yeah, although, you know, I think, Tim, you're part of a critical mass that is developing. I know just in the last year or two, there are significantly more institutions willing to take deposit accounts. There are more financial services coming out there. I'm advising one company called Fund Canna that just launched a factor in the industry, a working capital lender, which was unheard of a few years ago. So I think the things you're doing, educating regulators, being part of this sort of critical mass that's happening, is slowly changing it. But I agree, until that federal switch gets flipped, the risk reward between a banker who's dealing with Bank Secrecy Act potential liability, which is severe, and the reward of servicing a new industry doesn't really pencil out. So this has been a great.
Risk isn't lost on me. I mean, I don't look good in orange, and by doing what I'm doing, by offering these services, I put myself at risk. I could go to jail for this, just like the operators can for selling it. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, all the more reason, to deal with Jennifer and Graham, who are like the creme de la creme of the industry, and you know that you're in safe hands there. I think we're going to pivot to, and I'll introduce Kerrigan Call, managing partner of Chimienti, and he's going to say hi to us and everyone.
How you doing? Thanks for letting me be on here today. It's very kind of you guys all. We're an organization that are trying to help, as you talked about, regulations. This has to do with insurance needs, your liability. A lot of growers and distributors don't know what, like the financial thing that Tim was talking about. A lot of the insurance industry people do not get into that. But we've been able to come together with a lot of different organizations and come up with a PEO. That's a professional employee organization designed specifically for cannabis. You can become a member of it and offer your insurance needs, your financial needs, your compliance, your property and casualty, your workers' comp, those type of things. Those are all things that all the business guys are looking for to have them cover with that. And we specialize in that. So in that essence, it helps you find those things and takes it off your plate. And we try to help you with that program through our program.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I think we're going to check out another video, Jennifer, about your company, and come back and talk about it.
Working with Farmacy has been kind of a big focal point of us. You guys have been so supportive, and we are a new brand and we're just coming out of the gate, and you guys have been incredibly generous with your time and support. As we've all gone through the legislative process here in Santa Barbara County, I've always felt a sort of kingship with your team and all of the people that sort of you guys work with, and I've been so grateful that it's extended to the experience of working with Farmacy has been the same, and it's just felt like family, and it's a huge honor for us.
The Santa Barbara community is a really special thing. The people here are friendly, they're understated, they're nice, they're smart, and it's always been an agricultural county. It's from North County all the way down here to Carpinteria, it's filled with agriculture. And one of the things that we've seen over time is that agriculture has a harder and harder time in the U.S. and in California specifically. And cannabis has really been a lifeline to keep agriculture in Santa Barbara. I think people sometimes forget, when the last crop is harvested, the next crop that gets planted is townhomes, and cannabis is an awesome way to keep that from happening too fast.
We started out here with the mission to be able to incubate smaller brands and give them a pathway to market, small quantities, and do a lot of R&D to perfect the product and the process and to try to make it as fittable to the market as possible. So we specialize in being able to do smaller runs of product and be able to tweak the product as it needs to be able to match the needs of the consumers. We work with a lot of local brands and give them the opportunity to access the commercial market.
I think it is really cool that for people, particularly from Santa Barbara, but also visitors as well, to see the real farm-to-table concept with cannabis, right? And the Farmacy is no accident that it's spelled with an F like a farm, because we think farms over pharma and plants over pills is a real thing and a good thing, and it all starts here. Nothing happens in cannabis without the plant, and being so close with our supply chain, being able to grow here in Santa Barbara County, keep it in the county from start to finish, and put it on the shelf of the Farmacy so that Santa Barbara can get the freshest cannabis anywhere in the state is a really amazing opportunity.
Well, Jennifer, we got a little sneak peek there into Farmacy. The cannabis industry is in some ways, pretty mature, but still really in its infancy. As it is developing, how have you seen it change so far? Sort of where do you see it going, especially given your expertise in other retail? How does it compare?
Yeah, when I think about, starting in this industry 4 years ago and being mainly in medical markets, so not quite recreational markets, and seeing the different iterations of a retail experience, from feeling a little bit cold, medical, you walk in, there could be a big security guy with a big gun out in front. So your experience, 4 and 5 years ago is quite different from now. You walk into a lot of retailers now, and it's inclusive, it's welcoming. People, it's almost like Cheers, where everyone knows your name. You walk in, and that's the goal. Other things that I've definitely seen as the market has matured has really been just this significant shift in demographics. We're about 65 male, 35 female, where I think probably about 3 years ago, it was an 80-20. So we're starting to see the female shopper really come into her own, which is exciting to see. Women from 40 to 65 are the fastest growing cannabis consumer in the industry right now across the US. So fun to see people start to explore, kind of figure out how cannabis is right for them. And then I'd say kind of the last thing I'm seeing is, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is just the offering when it comes to product. You saw the video. We spend a lot of time sourcing locally. And that was just one video of our Santa Barbara shop, but we have many other pharmacy shops. And what we do is really make sure we curate the menu. We give people the platform to get on our shelves. And I think in the end that really benefits the local customer, because they can feel good that they're coming in, we're supporting the local environment, and they're getting these great products. So those are just some of the small things that I've seen as the market matures.
Yeah. Have you seen some trends as far as which products are selling? Flower, vape, topicals?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, flower is king. It's kind of king or queen, however you want to say it. But flower is typically, in the state of California, it's about 40% of the basket right now. If you look across the US and all recreational, it's about 38. So flower is always going to be one of the most important aspects of when somebody comes in. You know, really interesting over the last year and in 2021, I talk about it a lot, but pre-rolls is definitely one of the only categories that saw year-over-year growth. And then beverages. I think beverages are such an interesting story because you have this consumer that's coming in, and, you know, Graham was saying it earlier, plants over pills, farm over pharma. There's many people that are coming in that are just looking for better options, and definitely people who have consumed maybe a little bit more during the pandemic, you never know. And finding some better options. And beverage is one of the categories. It's still a pretty small percent of the basket, about 3%. But 2 years ago, it was almost non-existent, and it was maybe about 0.5. So definitely seeing consumers finding ways to enjoy cannabis across the bar. So flower will always be king, but interesting categories are definitely coming on board right now.
I know the alcohol industry is not happy.
You don't want to hear that.
With the rise of cannabis beverages. There's some real competition there. But Graham, you know, I love the sort of the metaphor of just the conversion of tomatoes and cucumbers to cannabis. I mean, how is that evolving? How are these farms, these communities transitioning and making this the biggest crop, one of the biggest crops in the state right now, right?
Yeah, I think it's arguably the biggest cash crop. I think officially it is the fourth biggest, if I remember right, but that is only counting the legal side of the market, which is probably, you know, a fifth or a quarter of the actual market. So I think if you included all of that in there, you'd probably see it, at least in California, as the top cash crop. And it's interesting. It's evolving quite a bit, right? I mean, if you think back a few years, there was a high priority put on being able to hide with what you were doing because people didn't want to end up dressed in orange. As our friend mentioned over here, it's not a good look on people. Now it's at least not on the top of the list, or not even on the list at all. So now you're seeing a bit of a rebalancing where you're seeing more traditional agricultural communities building cannabis businesses, right? So Ventura County is an example where a new farm is. Santa Barbara County is an example, taking their places, next to some of the more traditional ones, right? And I think a lot of credit is due to the folks who were up in Humboldt, the early folks, the Don Perones and things like that really, forged the trail and pushed, the compassion and the medical side of this to get the whole thing started. So, we definitely want to keep a place, and I think there is a long-term place for that. Just like you see, the Russian River or other craft beers on one part, and then you see the Coronas and things like that on the other part. Like cannabis is going to be in a space where, like alcohol, and I don't love the analogy because I'm not sad to hear the alcohol not happy about it, because I think cannabis is a lot better for people than alcohol is. But the same way that we have that diversification as a CPG product, I think you're going to see that in cannabis. So it's becoming more and more agriculture. Things are developing that allow us to move away from just the 2 buds in a Ziploc, which is kind of the traditional method, to all the edibles and the live resins and the live rosins and the pre-rolls and the pre-packs and all that stuff is now really coming out of the market in mass. And I think it's super exciting to see the diversification. And again, lots of different ways to enjoy cannabis, more now than ever before, and there'll be even more tomorrow.
Yeah. It's been a fascinating journey, especially in California, going back 20 years to the beginning of medical.
26 years from medically legal, or when that started, right? So even though we were a little bit late, I was kind of sad that we didn't get to have the gold medal in terms of legalizing for adult use. Colorado did that, but if you think about who actually started the whole thing 26 years ago, California started the medical path, which you could, say is the origin story of everything that's happening right now.
Yeah, and it's nice to hear you say there's still a place at the table for the legacy growers, those sort of historical areas. I'm certainly looking forward to the development of canna tourism, where I can go up to Humboldt and have this like wine tasting Napa Valley experience, and live in the lap of cannabis luxury up there.
Yeah,
certainly looking for that. Of course, the headwind is taxes, not enough licenses, and then the unlicensed industry itself. What should be done about the unlicensed stuff? I mean, what are we going to do about that?
I mean, I think I would distill it to two things: less taxes, more retail. Those are the two things we need, right? I mean, personally, I don't think people should be getting arrested and going to jail for a plant, right? So enforcement is actually hard if you take that as a precondition. The thing that they can do, though, and they can do it easily and fairly quickly, is give the legal operators a chance to compete on a level playing field. If two things cost the same, I think most consumers are going to pick licensed products, tested products, all the form factors that don't typically come out of the unlicensed market, right? I mean, if someone offered you up Absolute vodka or some bathtub gin for 20% less, you'd probably stick with the brand you could count on, right? Now, if you make that disparity so big that the Absolute is 2 or more times than the other stuff, people start to take chances. Then you add that to the fact that we do have, as we mentioned, 26 years of unlicensed cannabis. So there is a pre-existing kind of pathway there. So what they need to do is they need to lower the taxes. They need to ease the path to getting doors open. Then I think the legal market can outcompete the illicit market, and that's the best solution.
Yeah, and historically, I mean, that's what this country did post-prohibition.
Yep.
Get everyone over is not hammer the industry with a bunch of taxes from day one, trying to squash them.
I think it was a 7-year tax holiday when they legalized alcohol, right? It's like, the metaphor I use is if you're starting a fire and you get the embers going, you don't take a big giant log and throw it down on it. You get some sticks, right? And then you get some twigs and you get the thing going, and then you can eventually throw the logs on it. But you can't, if you do that at the beginning, you just crush it. And that's what's happening right now.
Just really quick, I got so passionate as soon as you start talking about taxes and kind of playing the leveling field between illegal and legal. I think one of the things, Graham said it earlier, there's 1,000 legal dispensaries right now in California, and there's estimated to be over 3,000 illegal shops and deliveries. So again, when you start looking at that, you think about some of these counties and municipalities that have moratorium. Graham says more retail. I kind of tweak that a little bit. I say more retail, but in the right counties. So having more counties open up so that you're not have this density of cannabis dispensaries on top of each other, but really giving access to a wider variety of the California map. I think that's kind of when I look at, tax relief, some of our cities, you can have up to 34% additional taxes based on some of these counties' local taxation. So it's a tough one for the consumer to kind of validate when they're really watching their wallet.
Yeah, I call it California's original sin in referring all licensing authority to every city, including banning everything, because it just turned this whole industry on its head. There's an interesting kind of push and pull now with delivery services and whether you can deliver into a county that's banned it, and there's litigation that's been spawning. So that hopefully can be a catalyst for some additional change. But I mean, you guys as licensed operators are, environmentally friendly. You're not sucking up water that you're not supposed to use. You're not dumping it where you're not supposed to dump it. I mean, you're employing people, you're paying taxes, you're doing everything by the book. It's a shame that you have to go up against sort of this unlicensed space. I do some receivership work, and one thing we've been doing and exploring is, because the unlicensed businesses kind of jump around, especially on the retail side, and they disappear, there are some laws on the books for landlords that lease to unlicensed businesses. So not on the criminal side, but on civil penalties to, scare away landlords into leasing. LA, for example, has a law on the books. It's $10,000 per day the landlord is fined. So it's not being enforced really. But if it was, maybe that kind of thing can shake these things. Because nowadays no one's buying moonshine, no one's really buying like counterfeit cigarettes. Something needs to get us to that point. So anyone can ask questions, by the way, on whatever platform you're on. We're happy to take them. So Tim, tell us, for those who are compliant, what are you looking for kind of in your potential customers, and how are you helping them navigate the compliant route?
Yeah, well, I think I'd start back with what have operators that are doing it right had to experience to date, and then how are we going to do it differently? So we have 2 representatives of premium cannabis brands, right? But all cannabis operators have a cannabis premium placed on almost everything that they do for their business, whether it's insurance, property acquisitions, getting access to capital, and then of course having banking services. So operators who have been lucky enough to get a relationship with a bank that will take them have been having to pay just ridiculous fees for the services they get. And not to mention that a lot of the services for these commercial cannabis operators that banks will offer are restricted. Like, you'll have a checking account, but you won't have a checkbook. You'll have a checking account, you won't have a debit card, so you can't go to Costco and buy snacks for the break room. All this stuff is based out of fear and misunderstanding, and getting a bank account can be an arduous task. I mean, I talk to operators all the time that said, we've been waiting for a bank account with XYZ Bank, and it's been taking us 6 months, 9 months to get an account. So like Graham said, when you finally get an account, you pop a bottle of champagne. That just seems ridiculous. So what are we doing, right? Like, this problem has a solution. So Trellis, our whole mission is to make cannabis banking normal, as I said, and to treat the operators like normal businesses. Now, we have regulatory uncertainty, which puts a lot of pressure on us to do more to make sure that everybody's legit, because there is a big, legacy market and then black market out there. We get in trouble and we get at risk if we are engaging with them. So we have to do a lot to make sure that everyone's legit. But to fulfill our mission, we have 3 things that we focus on. First, we focus on, we are a credit union sponsored organization. So credit unions are different than banks, and we have different missions. A credit union's mission is to serve the underserved, right? There is no population probably on the planet that's more underserved than the cannabis community. So we want to open up to those people who are doing the right things, and those companies are doing the right things, and the employees of those companies. We want to help them. This shouldn't be a problem much longer, and we want to make that simple and straightforward for them. The second thing we do is that we want to create partnerships. It's a difficult market to be in. As Graham mentioned, California has challenges, but you don't want to put it this way, you don't want your bank account relationship to be a part-time job, right? You can't afford it. Like, you want to know that the money gets there and that you can use it when you need it. That's what we're focusing on. And we're here to help the operators understand, why do we ask the questions that we might ask, right? Lots of banks just say, we need this, give it to us like in 2 minutes, or else your bank account's getting shut down. Now, we're like, hey, for both of us, we need to understand what's going on here, and let's figure out the best way to do that. So we work to help them, and we work to help them grow. Because if they don't grow and they don't succeed, we won't. So there's a vested interest there. And then finally, we focus on value. We're not here to be one of those, banks that may engage the market, but they do it purely by the motive of profit. We're not here to profiteer. We don't have a fee schedule that's 100 fees long. It's a flat 1 fee per month. You get access. We're here to help you. And that's what the financial institutions need to do. They need to take it as it's an opportunity to engage a new market and help it grow. If you can help it grow, everybody will succeed. Everyone will be better off. And we just really need to focus on giving the cannabis operators what they need to run their business, and then work to help identify what they want in the future. Access to capital, that's a big one right now. Many people are afraid to create loans for cannabis operators because of these regulatory uncertainties. So they get forced into going to hard money lenders and paying rates in excess of 25%. Like that just doesn't seem fair. And it, in my opinion, isn't. Financial service companies are here to provide a service. And we need to focus on that, making it realistic and fair for the operators.
Yeah. Well, credit unions were really the first to enter the space when no one else would. They really stepped up to serve the community. And we even represent one who formed a QSO, credit union service organization, to lend money to the industry, which sort of gets out from under the typical regulations that credit unions can only serve their members and have geographical limitations. The QSO can now lend across state lines and outside of their members, and it's just providing a wonderful service. And without them, the industry would have even a tougher time. So, what do you think, Tim, it's going to take to open up? We talked a little bit about safe banking, but what do you think? What about that? What else is gonna open things up financially for this business?
Well, I've been disappointed for 4 years with regard to federal regulatory changes. I think that the market needs to understand that even if safe banking was approved tomorrow, or if the MORE Act passed, I don't think it's going to make a big impact into how many financial institutions will engage with the cannabis community. So why do I say that? First of all, I don't think big banks are going to do it because there's not enough incentive for them. So the risk reward's not there. And if you look at, Chase, it's a $3 trillion financial institution. They can bank the entire cannabis market and it's not going to be that big of a deal for them. So they're just going to wait. And maybe they will not ever really get into it. When we look across the country, like I've said, there's 12,000 financial institutions and less than 200 that are doing it. Why? Because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of risk. And if you don't understand the community, you don't understand the product, you're going to have a real tough time building a program that can serve the market. So when things become legalized, I personally would be shocked if after 5 years post-legalization that we have 1% of the United States financial institutions that will embrace cannabis operators. I don't think that there's going to be the appetite, and the motivation cannot be fees and profit. It's got to be, we're doing this to create relationships that will fulfill a need to support our communities. And I think a lot of people are going to just pass on it. So if there was 1,000 banks across the country that would deal with cannabis, I would be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, the way I always pitched it to banks, credit unions, speaking to them at conferences is like, right, it's not about the fees. It's about helping. It's about getting relationships. It's creating loyalty, really. I mean, Graham and Jennifer, do you agree? It's like if your partners now in banking and financial services, you have some strong relationship with, some allegiance to, that even if, Wells Fargo calls you tomorrow, you're going to stay, have some loyalty to where you started.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really, I think it's an amazing opportunity for banks right now to build true partnerships, right? Like you could be a small fish in a very big pond in general banking, or you could be a big fish in a much smaller pond in cannabis banking, right? It is an opportunity to get in with businesses on the ground floor, businesses that are going to be big, to build that loyalty, to build that relationship. I think there's, opportunities, not that I want to see the cannabis industry gouged, but you're just, there's less selection out there. So there's ways that you can benefit on both sides of the table. And, I think it's important to recognize too, that having a bank account is not the same as being banked, right? Like that's just the bare minimum, right? There's a whole plethora of other services that are out there, and the banks, we borrow money and we're one of the few that can, but we pay 2.5 times what and the bank collects 2.5 times what they would get from a general business loan otherwise. So, there's opportunity, and that came from a relationship that started with just a bank account, eventually became a, multi-million-dollar loan that is good for us because it's some of the best rates we could find, and good for the bank because the yields are 2 to 3x what they would get out in the market.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen, I mean, the rates have been coming down. When I first started doing it, loans were at credit card rates really in the high 20s, and now they're sub 10%. have you seen some improvement over the last few years?
Yeah, I think the best rates I've seen for the biggest of the MSOs with massive balance sheets are about 8%. We borrowed money at about 10%. So it's certainly getting better. It used to be that anything under 15% was a great deal. So and again, I do think safe banking will happen. I'm fairly optimistic it'll happen this year. I think that'll be a whole new wave of normalization on the capital and banking sides. And again, you think about there's just one kind of friction after another on cannabis regulations, taxes, cost of capital, extra work you have to do for compliance, extra work you have to do to go through insurance and everything else. It's every one of those things that we can turn off is the ability for the industry to go that much faster.
Yeah, and looking forward in California, where do you see things going?
So I think the future is very bright. I think it's going to be a turbulent next 6 months or so. I think that we're going to see some relief on the government side, first in taxes, hoping for that in July. I think the elimination of the cultivation tax is something that we've been pushing hard for. And I feel like most of the legislators recognize that taking a smaller slice of a bigger pie is much better than throwing the pie on the floor and stomping on it, which is kind of what's happening right now. I do think you'll see a faster pace of new stores opening. 31 stores last month. I think it was 30 the month before that. If you contrast that against 1,000 stores in 4 years, the slope of the curve is coming up. They're working on some template boilerplate ordinances to make the 65% or so of counties that currently ban commercial cannabis, give them a faster pathway to permitting it. So I think that's all very good news on the California front. I think safe banking has a good chance. I think federal legalization is going to be a little while, but I do think we're seeing so many states, and it's gone from a when, not if, right? And it's also gone from a Democrat for, Republican against, to both of them for, and just different kind of perspectives on how to do it. So the fact that we now have a Schumer bill and a Nancy Mace bill, and the original MORE Act from Kamala Harris, like they're all floating around out there, and that how to do it, not if to do it conversation is a sea change from where we were even just a year ago.
Yeah, to think that a Republican would be championing more progressive legislation is kind of a surprise to me.
I think that's the big thing, is it's no longer viewed as a progressive issue. You have governors talking about Republican governors talking about executive action at the state level. You've got Dave Joyce pushing for the HOPE Act to help get funds to states to help expunge convictions and things like that. So it really has become, the poll's at 91%. It's hard to find a more bipartisan issue than that.
Yeah, and maybe for me, cheap shot Democrats can't get out of their own way to get a win. This is like a layup. I almost cursed there, but I held it back.
It does feel like that.
We have a question. How can we as an industry come together so we can foster cooperation over competition? An example, hemp producers attacking producers of hemp-derived Delta-9. That's Graham or Jennifer. Do you have?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing there is to recognize that if you believe in cannabinoids, whether it's from hemp or cannabis, if you believe that makes the world a better place, we should view ourselves as on the same team, right? So we should be looking at ways that we can advocate that we can educate people, that we can lobby together to bring down taxes, that we can make it easier for the industry to flourish. And a high tide floats all boats is a much better perspective than a zero-sum game where you're thinking, corporate cannabis wins and that means legacy cannabis loses. That's the wrong way to think of it. This should be a place where everybody has a seat at the table. We all lobby together for lower taxes. We all lobby together for interstate commerce. We all lobby together, for taking the ridiculous packaging restrictions and et cetera off, so that our industry has a chance. Because again, we think the world is a better place with more cannabis in it, and that's what we're trying to make happen.
Yeah. And hemp, for those unaware, is federally legal. Hemp is the same plant as cannabis, but it has less than 0.3% THC in it. And California and USDA and all, there are now new regulatory schemes permitting the cultivation of hemp and deriving CBD from it. What's left sort of unsaid so far at the federal level is what you can actually do with it, and that's still a work in progress. Topicals are pretty, readily available. Health claims are a no-no. Ingestibles are a question mark. So there's a sort of this parallel track. And interestingly, Kentucky, one of the big, wannabe producers of hemp, happens to be the home state of Mitch McConnell. Whether that's a coincidence or not, you can determine on your own. We have another question here. Thoughts on the reports saying how the legalization of cannabis is hurting dispensaries who have to navigate regulation while black market marijuana sales thrive? Yeah, Jennifer, that's kind of your wheelhouse here.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely take this one. I think that, as we look at what's happening, I don't think that legalization is hurting dispensaries. I think what's hurting the dispensaries is what we've been talking about this whole time. It's just the taxation, enforcing and making sure that these illegal shops are quickly shut down. And, I think at the end of the day, everything that Graham has been talking about, and Tim and I, is just we want the enforcement of these, what you would call a trap shop. And for me, when I think about, the legal recreational medical dispensaries, what's always going to be great about those and what's always going to send the customer back is this confidence level of product that's tested. They have, full ability to look at every single COA of every product that they've ever seen. So when I think about, the black market thriving, a lot of that has to do with more retail, more accessibility. So get more counties to open up so more people have access and they don't have to go to their guy or their gal, however you want to say it. And then I think you just have to really work on the tax relief, because again, when I think about probably 8 out of 10 customers, and just happened today at one of our places as I was getting ready for 420, and a sticker shock. I mean, that is one of the main things that I see when someone comes in, whether you're a pre-tax model or post-tax pricing model, that is not regulated. So when a customer comes in, there's just this ambiguity of what am I paying for? And I think if we can really address the taxation, then, this black market that is thriving right now will be back to a better level playing field.
Yeah, and that would be a wise strategy, right, for the regulators, because you want this legal industry to thrive so you can eventually get so much more in tax revenue. To Graham's point that we're making embers here. Don't put your boot on it. Where do you see kind of retail going, Jennifer? Take us, take your crystal ball out.
I mean, I think the thing that I'm seeing, and not even just in California, it's just creating an environment. There's a brand and a customer for everyone. Just like when you think about fashion, there are different fashion retailers out there, and men, women, and you look at it and you find the one that's right for you, and you become a loyal customer. So my hope for the future is continuing to have these really innovative spaces that are focused on the consumer, are focused on, bringing these great products to the consumer. And then I think at the end of the day too, is just really thinking about, how can we communicate to our customers? Maybe because it's 420 tomorrow, I'm thinking more about how I reach out to my customers, and it's challenging. Like my arsenal from back in my traditional retail days are very slim about how I can talk to a customer, how I can let them know about promos. I mean, we just were able to launch an app over 3 weeks ago. So we're now on Apple. We have an app on Google Play. You can't shop on it, but you can hear about it. So, I mean, for me, being in the industry after 4 years and finally getting an app, it felt like another, let's pop a bottle of champagne and celebrate that one. So I think, like we said before, getting more counties and municipalities to open up and really, again, that customer who just doesn't have access, doesn't want to drive 30 or 40 minutes, being able to give them enough different types of dispensaries that they can find the right one for them.
Yeah, because TV is not an option, right? TV commercials.
TV, I mean, you got billboards, but you have to be really careful where the billboards go. Social media has really locked down, other than, telling kind of the lifestyle and a narrative. You can't really talk about product or highlight product. And you got one big account that gets shut down for showing any type of cannabis. And then you have another account that has cannabis everywhere and still running strong. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. And yet 107,000 new jobs last year. So, notwithstanding all of that. Tim, you got any crystal ball predictions?
Well, I think that as people learn how to communicate and really understand each other on the financial side, whether you're an operator looking for just a bank account or you need capital to expand your business, it's going to be like so important for financial institutions to kind of get out of the mindset of, I have to think that you're a criminal until you're proven innocent, right? That just won't work. It's going to slow everything down. It's already a hassle to maintain a bank account if you're a cannabis operator. But if the financial institution you're dealing with looks at you like a criminal rather than an advocate, it's not going to get better. And, or I just say one thing, you mentioned the employment and the new job creation in this industry, and that can't be understated. But the one issue that we hear a lot about when we talk to, say, the CEO or CFO of a cannabis operation, they'll say, hey, it's great that you can give us access to banking, but our COO couldn't refinance his mortgage when rates were low because he's getting a W-2 from us, a cannabis company. Or, our bud tenders don't have a bank account, so we have to pay them in cash. We want to help the entire industry and, open up to the reality that there's 500,000 people in this country, and it's going to keep growing, that are involved in this industry. They aren't criminals. They're just hardworking people that have a really cool job, and give them access to a bank account. Let them get a credit card and an auto loan so they can drive to work and have a direct deposit for their paycheck. These are the silly things that have been really putting the brakes on the industry being able to expand. And, financial institutions really just have to wake up to the reality that this legislation through, states legalizing, at some point we're going to have 2 holdout states. Well, can you still say that cannabis is illegal in the United States if it's just 2 or 3 states that say we don't want it? No, let them decide. Let the Fed say it's fine and move on.
Yeah. Graham, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we got a long road ahead of us, but we know that the path that we're heading to is the right one. I think it's few and far between where you find somebody who doesn't think that full legalization is the end point at this stage, right? And so really now it just becomes the path to that. How can we do that in a way that helps as many people, helps people build businesses, give homes to, good homes to employees, and, gets out of this kind of dichotomy that we have where you have 38 states, if you include medical and adult use, that are all on this side of the line, and a federal government that's on that side of the line, right? I think there's many negative impacts beyond even cannabis, right? Like, if you can ignore blatantly the federal government on this, can you do it on other places? And maybe that's the way we want it to be. Maybe it's all states' rights, but I think getting those things in sync is important, and there's lots of upside benefits to it. I hope the job numbers next year are even bigger than they were last year, because it's an amazing industry, and the opportunity to create something that's been around. People have been buying it since the price was going to jail. So make jobs, help customers, help patients, build industry, create value. That's the goal.
Yeah. And it is interesting. We didn't talk much, but there are sort of these cross currents between the legacy operators, the humble, the multi-state operators, the ones that have built up intrastate operations in, cold weather climates that maybe don't want to see glasshouse shipping, product to Michigan because their indoor grows will be rendered valueless. So there's an interesting sort of confluence of different things happening. But at the end of the day, this is the coolest part of my practice for sure. I'm so thankful to be here with you all. And I never would have thought, 25 years ago when I was in college, this is what I would be doing today. So I try and kind of keep that top of mind as well. So thank you all for being here. I don't think we have any other questions. That is a wrap. Be sure to tune in again every month on the 3rd Tuesday of the month for more Live at 5. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Happy 420.
Happy 420.
Right at 6.
Cool.
Good job, everybody.
Awesome.
Fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
Where do people